One. Welcome to the Lila Life Show. I am your host, Linda Andrews, and such a blessing to be with you today. I'm introducing Emily Todd, our special gift, an ICF certified business coach, speaker, and corporate facilitator. Welcome, Emily.
Hello, I am so excited to be here.
We have so many gems to go through today, and I have a sense that it's going to be that rocket ship kind of feeling from the first moment I met you years ago to right now, how life is full of those serendipities we love. I want to share with our listeners a little bit more about you, and then I'm passing it over to you. You support service providers to unfuck their marketing and learn how to audaciously market themselves and their work. I see this a lot where people are having trouble with both of those things. So can't wait to talk more. You work with a lot of coaches, healers, service providers, including hypnotherapists. Love that work. And your specialty is to help people scale their business, especially through social media marketing, messaging, and content strategy. You have your 15 years of marketing experience in the Fortune 500, aka the experts, and then helping startups and service providers use all that. And I just can't wait to hear about your special processes. And welcome again to the show.
I am so stoked to be here, and I love the magical way we met like a year and a half ago at a psychedelic conference.
At Joe and the Juice, shout out to my mom. She loves that place.
No, I mean, that's when you know you're going to get along with someone. When you meet them at a psychedelic conference, you're like, okay, we have a lot in common. So here we are. How cool, a year and a half later.
Yes, it is. It's funny. I remember that moment right before you came in. It was sort of this chaotic like energy going on in the restaurant at that moment, and then you come in and then we sync up, and it was just a funny like that whole I remember I was like, I need a break, I need to integrate. It was really hot for whatever reason,
Yes.
extremely warm. We were walking back, I'm like, whoa, this was unseasonable for November in Florida.
I remember that. And I also remember because, like I just said, I'm a projector in human design. I was like, I need some space from all the people. My nervous system's a little fried, but then I found you and you were very soothing to my nervous
Oh,
system.
thank you. Yes, I have that way. Or sometimes I'm just really amping things up a little too much, but that's a whole other thing. So
You know what's needed.
yeah, so 15 years in marketing and expertise, but I'd love to hear a little bit about your just origin story and what brought you to this moment. I believe you're international right now, and just how much you want to share about this, and then let's get into the deeper work.
Oh, yeah, let's go. So TLDR on
Yeah.
my background is I got into the marketing branding world when I was, gosh, like 18. That was my first job and just fell in love with helping companies figure out what their secret magic sauce was and translating that to the world. And worked in social media marketing for many years, helping, yeah, Fortune 500 companies scale their brands and really heavily on the digital side, on the social media side. Like when I started doing social media marketing, Instagram did not even exist.
That's what I was
Okay.
thinking. I'm like, you're like an OG of seeing that
OG.
evolution.
Yeah. I mean, we were marketing on Twitter when it was called Twitter. It was not called X then, y'all. Marketing on Facebook and YouTube. And I climbed the corporate ladder pretty fast, pretty quickly. By age 30, I'm 36 now. I was managing a large team at a tech startup, was like, oh my God, this is everything I've worked for my whole life. And had that feeling of having made it, right? And I immediately called my dad to be like, Dad, I'm making this much money now. I'm managing this many people. I have this title. And I remember him saying, that's great. I'm so proud of you. And in that moment, just being like, wait, that wasn't the reaction I wanted. I wanted some profession of love and how I'm his favorite daughter of four. And just in retrospect, really seeing how so much of my hustle and grind climbing the ladder and my 9 to 5 days was totally to make my dad proud and receive more of his love. You know, we could all look at so much
That
of
the
our
magical cup of validation.
yeah, we could look at so much of our behavior, especially in our 20s, I think, and see how it's like trying to make mommy and daddy proud. In that moment, I was in therapy at the time, so had some tools to process and really realized very quickly, I don't actually want to be doing this. I don't actually like marketing for these companies. It's kind of boring me. And okay, so I'm a director now. So what? in a few years I'm a VP. Like, is that going to be more exciting? Is that going to light my heart up? And resigned shortly thereafter, actually. And this ended up being soon before COVID hit. My last day was a few days before COVID hit.
Wow.
And I was like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to be skipping on beaches in Bali, working 4 hours a week. It's going to be great. And then COVID hit, quarantine at my parents' house. And I was like, well, that's not what I thought entrepreneurship was going to be. And my first pass at entrepreneurship was marketing consulting. And again, like in quarantine, in all of that spaciousness we all had, I had a total dark night of the soul of like, well, I don't really want to even be marketing consulting. It's the same thing. Just I kind of work for myself, but whoever I'm consulting for is my boss for a few months. So this is not it. And found this is a true story. I found a notebook from when I was like 20 years old in my parents' basement during COVID. And I was like, I wonder what 20-year-old Emily was thinking about. And I looked at the notebook. I had a bucket list of things I wanted to do with my life. And on there, I had put be a coach, be a life coach.
Wow.
I was like, how interesting. What did 20-year-old Emily know about coaching? Coaching is not what it is today. But I think it was because at the time I was interested in OGs like Gabby Bernstein and was like, whatever she's doing, I want. But of course, like I put that dream aside, was very much like, let's just be serious and climb the corporate ladder. And so decided to explore that. And I looked at my 9 to 5 career, and what I really loved was actually the management, the people management, and working with my team and figuring out what their personal goals were, in addition to their professional goals, breaking all the boundaries as a manager, getting very involved in their personal life. So went to get certified as a coach, and the rest is history, baby.
I love it. I love it. And I love just how that full circle of writing that when you're 20 and then coming back, but with all the expertise and your own dark night of the soul journey. Before we started recording, you said how so much of business is shadow work. And
Oh,
a girlfriend of mine sent me, this is actually very sweet. She and I have been sending each other a journal back and forth for 14 years
oh,
that we
wow.
like bought in Costa Rica randomly. There's so many random synchronicities there, but in the journal recently she shared, entrepreneurship is no joke, and it's really like the deep work in that, more or less. And that's something that I found surprising, but in retrospect not so much. It reminds me of psychedelics as the non-specific amplifier. It's like whatever's going on is going to be 1,000 times. And
Oh, yeah.
it sounds like you have some experience not only going through that, but guiding people through that.
I love how you compared it to psychedelics, by the way. Yeah, entrepreneurship, it amplifies all of your and triggers all
Mm-hmm.
of your greatest doubts, wounds, fears, insecurities. Like you're going to me up against your human hardwiring
Mm-hmm.
as an entrepreneur. As humans, we're wired to crave safety and routine and comfort and the known. And entrepreneurship is the unknown every day. And it can feel and is in your first 2 years incredibly unsafe, right? You're like, where's the next client coming from, or where's the next paycheck coming from? And it can really just trigger so much fear and doubt. And am I enough? And what's wrong with me? Why, again, like we were talking about before the show started, what's wrong with me? Because everyone else on Instagram
Mm.
is talking about their 100K months, their 50K months. Like what's going on for me? And I'm just so devoted to, in my own marketing and with my clients, speaking into the truth of it. It's
Mm-hmm.
really fucking hard. And
Mm-hmm.
it is not like an overnight quantum leap thing. Like the quantum leap is so talked about in the spiritual business community. And like, look, I had a quantum leap on paper in the last year and a half, but I like financially speaking, but I know it wasn't actually a quantum leap because it was all the years of eating shit sandwiches and having existential crises and never giving up and being resilient that led to that moment where the boulder started to tip. I always view entrepreneurship as like you're pushing this boulder up the mountain for the first 2 years. And it's like
It's
blood and
rolling you
sweat and
over.
tears. It
It's
keeps
going
rolling back. It
backwards.
keeps hitting you in the face. And you're just like, why? Like, where's that momentum and ease? And you do reach a point where the boulder starts to tip. but it takes a lot of expanding your capacity to be in the unknown, to be in that instability, to be in the quote unquote rejection that it is a huge part of entrepreneurship, especially if you're a service provider. And that to me is what really like this storied quantum leap is that you see everywhere online. It's all those years of
All the
pushing the boat.
steps.
Yeah.
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 I love that. I think there's a real reality check there. And it reminds me, I like this mantra, nothing is ever lost. And it can feel like in some of those moments that everything is lost, but you're all of you as you're going through the journey. And even in those moments where none of it makes sense and it feels like nothing's clicking,
Yeah.
it is, but you're just in one of those little bumps that it doesn't feel or look like it. Um,
Yeah. It doesn't, to the human mind, it doesn't look
mhm,
like anything's working, right? We're
mhm,
not seeing the financial result necessarily in the first 2 years. But I believe those boulder pushing years are there to expand you
mm,
into the entrepreneur that can hold that vision, that business you're calling in. And you couldn't, like when you think about this from an energetic perspective, right? Like when I first started coaching and I was like, I want 10K months, I want 20K months. I didn't have the capacity to hold that. I didn't have the capacity to hold that kind of client. I didn't know how to receive that kind of money. I didn't have the knowledge of how to actually coach humans fully. So it just, those years of feeling like nothing was working were really expanding my capacity and stretching my capacity through all the rejection, the mistakes. So nothing is working. And that like is what chiseled me. I view it as like you're this block of marble when you first start as an entrepreneur. And then each of these setbacks and shit sandwiches, it like chisels a little bit more of you and sculpts you more into that energetic match or whatever you want to call it. But each level I think that we look to move into as an entrepreneur requires some additional initiation into the
mm.
human that can hold that vision. And I've reached these milestones, right, that I had when I first started out. And part of my mind was like, no more problems, woohoo, we did it. But then it's just there's more to expand into, there's more edges to stretch into, there's more places where my nervous system can't fully hold yet, or my mind can't fully hold yet what I'm calling in my next level. So it's just like I always say, entrepreneurship is for a special kind of crazy person that like wants to sign up for this nonstop initiation.
Like the hero's journey nonstop, and it just keeps going and
Yeah.
going. And I love that. And I love how you're talking about expanding the capacity. I think, especially at the early stage, people don't have context for that, right? It's like it is all unknown. You don't know where your comfort zone ends and begins, maybe because it all
Mm,
feels like that. And it will stretch and you can hold more, but like you're saying, it's going to keep being like that. And if you go into it knowing that, at least for me, it feels like, okay, we have
mm.
some context. Like this is what it's supposed to feel like. And I think
Yes.
about business as if you're doing it quote unquote right, you're solving a problem for your customer, you're meeting a need for your
Mm.
customer. And then in business, you're solving more problems. It's just like a bunch of problems all the time that are being solved.
We're
And
just a firefighter.
yeah, and it's like, oh, that's the context. That's what's going on here. And that moment of, oh, have I arrived? It's like, well, maybe you've arrived because you've mastered some of that and you're a lot
Mm.
better at it, but then the problems evolve and everything becomes a different set of problems or complexities that at the early stage weren't there. And that's part of that evolution that I think that you're talking about.
Oh yeah, yeah. New level, new problems. But like for example, when I first started out, a huge, and this is again when I think entrepreneurship, the majority is inner work. A
Mm,
huge block I had was this massive lifelong fear I had always had since I was a little kid about quote unquote public speaking. I was terrified. Like me, even a few years ago, recording a podcast like this, no freaking way. You couldn't even pay me $10,000. There's no way I would do it Because like since I was a kid, I was tall and skinny when I was a kid and just felt very uncomfortable in my body. I felt like I stood out. I was so tall and gangly and kids would make fun of me. And so it just developed this thing when I would get up to speak in front of the class, I would start shaking, turn bright red, black out. And that extended into my 9 to 5 days, which was very problematic. Like the more I got promoted, the more I was presenting at meetings. And the more I was panicking and blacking out and sweating and
Wow.
not knowing what I was saying. And so when it came to launching my own business, it was very apparent, hey, you have to like talk to people and be seen. And podcasts are great for visibility, hosting master classes, launching group courses. And I was trying to build a business by hiding from all of that. I was like, I don't want to do that. No, 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 no. And so that was one of my biggest initiations the first 2 years was overcoming that. And now it's one of my favorite things to do a live event or record a podcast like this with you. But that was a huge, and you can't like, that's the thing too with entrepreneurship. You can give someone a list of like, these are the things you do. You can find it on ChatGPT at this point in time, right? But it's like that inner work, those inner blocks, those fears that prevent you from acting on those things. So like I knew, yeah, you should be more visible, you should host events, you should be on podcasts, but I couldn't actually do it. Like when I did my first masterclass, didn't sleep the night before. Second masterclass, had a meltdown. There was like too many signups, asked my friend to co-host with me. So I was like, I can't do it alone. But I stretched my capacity. I edged into it. And now I love it. And what it's opened up for me in my business is just, that was my next level.
The next edge.
Yeah.
And remembering the next one's coming.
Oh, I'm in a season of being initiated right now, baby. Right now it's boundaries.
Oh, we like that one. We like that one.
Yeah.
We like
And
that one.
seeing where my people pleasing pattern is playing out.
Mm.
So that's been fun.
Yeah, so fun. The self-worth aspect underneath business. It's like if you were your most embodied, empowered person, that person makes decisions a little differently than the person that doesn't. And so for me, that can be like, oh, this is really obvious what the boundary is. But then it's like, oh, there's a lot of mud. This is so muddled. Like I have to undo this kind of chaos.
Mhm.
What did I get myself into? And every
Yeah.
time it reminds me of the chiseling that you were saying. It's like, oh, a little more chiseled here. Perfect. I didn't think I needed any more, but you got that next little chisel. Great.
Yeah, I didn't think I had any boundary work to do. I thought my people pleaser was no longer here, but no, she's very alive and active. So I've really been leading into that work this year and working on that with my own coach because yeah, again, that's my edge right now. And I didn't have that edge earlier on because I didn't have really many clients to see where my boundaries were leaky and where my energy was being. Again, I'm a projector. I have limited energy and I really thrive in spaciousness and being able to tune into my own genius and my own perspective. And when I'm in the over delivering, over communicating, over giving, it is not good for anyone.
Yeah.
Anyone.
Where'd Emily go? I don't see her anymore. She's gone.
Yeah,
It's all
yeah.
taken. I think about this a lot. Like if you didn't have boundaries, like people will take until there's nothing left to take. And so if you just know that, oh, whoa, I have to be on and it's not just one person, right? If it was me and then everyone else, and knowing that everyone else would take everything from me if they could, not even in malfeasance, just the way it goes. It's like, whoa, everyone's trying to take everything from me. Let me make sure that that's not going to happen right now. And it's just been
Yeah.
like a simple way to look at it because of like, what do I want to feel like? What do I want my days to look and feel like? And then what has to happen so everything isn't being taken from me. And that's just been like an easy frame lately. But I feel some similarities there where it like bubbles back up. It's like, whoa, okay.
Yeah, and seeing how we create it. Like it's not the other person's fault, it's on us
Right.
and our own leadership. That's been a huge thing for me this year too, is leadership. And I'm like, oh, I haven't been leading that. Um, but I think for me, part of it, I know it always comes from ultimately a good place, but something I've realized too of where it's coming from with me is I'm a business coach, right? And there's a lot happening in the business coaching space that I'm like not cool with. I just feel like there's a lot of absurdly high prices, low support, low proximity. So I've been on this kind of mission. A part of my brand is to just really be a business coach of deep integrity and give a lot. And and I hear that feedback all the time from my clients, your integrity, you give me so much. And so my ego, oh, wow, I feel so good. But now it's seeing, okay, there's some leaky energy here and on this quest to be the business coach of the utmost integrity. That's ultimately now, yeah, not fully in alignment to where I'm at now
Mm.
and
Yeah,
how I can be my boss for my clients.
I'm curious the way, and I know your specialty is around service providers, and with your experience in marketing, there's so much around storytelling that has to be clicking from storytelling into marketing into that service providing. I want to hear your thoughts on that. And I have another question, but that's where I first want to start is, how you connect
Storytelling.
storytelling to marketing for service providers and help people present like their best self forward in that kind of
Mm.
magnetic, attractive, you can deliver kind of way.
Yeah, yeah. So storytelling, as we know, right, is the most powerful form of marketing. And I'm of the belief, if you're a service provider, you are your greatest testimonial.
Mm,
And people buy from people, right? We know all this. This is like a conceptual knowledge, but a big part of my work with my clients and just something I'm always iterating on with me is how can we tell your story and the result you've created for yourself, the beautiful life you've created for yourself, how you've gotten
mm,
from point A to point B. And this is confronting for some newer service providers who feel like, oh, but maybe I don't have the full result yet. Like I'm not, who am I to speak about my journey and my story? I'm not at 10K months yet, or I'm not perfectly healed, or whatever the destination is. And so a big part of my work is really teaching and guiding my clients to claim their story with audacity and to really just shout it from the rooftops, the result they've created for themselves, the life they've created for themselves, and really showing them, okay, yeah, you're like, I'm not fully arrived, but to your ideal client, you are like 1,000 steps ahead. And can you fall in love with your unique story, your unique journey, and speak about that in your marketing and
mm,
speak about it over and over again. This is something a lot of my clients really resist and something I resisted at first, but the repetition really required to get your message across and to bring people into your
mm,
offerings. Statistics are showing us it's something like 15 to 20 times in 2024 before someone buys something or even sometimes signs up for a freebie because there's a lot of freebies now. So it's like repeatedly telling your story, telling your point A to point B, being like shouting it from the goddamn rooftops. Like if you're not a stand for your story, what you've created for yourself, like, oh my God, you're really, I think, robbing your ideal client, your community, your humans from finding so much inspiration. And to me, your story is one of the biggest connection points when you, again, from a marketing perspective, it's what people like, they can really start to see themselves in you and certain things that you struggled with, maybe they're struggling with. So I just think it's so powerful. And it's not, doing that one post or speaking about it once on a podcast. It's like all the time
mhm.
speaking about where like I always say a good rule of thumb is about once a week, you want to be speaking into some aspect of your story. Because again, people are overwhelmed in 2024. They're not as involved in what you're posting online as you are. They're not remembering, they're not reading your full Instagram post or email. So just really claiming your story and falling in love with your story is so crucial and so key. And yeah, having the audacity to just love so hard on where you're at instead of it's not good enough. I'm not fully arrived. Like I remember when I first started business coaching, I was like, well, but I'm not at 50K months yet. How can I be a business coach? But it's like, no, owning and looking at, okay, but I'm 1,000 steps ahead from a lot of people. Can I fall in love with my story right now? Can I speak about that?
I love this. I think it doesn't feel like spiritual bypassing. maybe it feels more like disembodiment, but where it's like you're so in the vision and what you want to create that you're not in the now. So you're being pulled out of the present. And then you're not, the people you're serving likely are 1 to 100 steps behind you, quote unquote. And so all those gems could help them so much, but you're feeling that frustration of where you want to be and where you're not, but to the point where you may not even be fully clearly seeing where you're at. And then
Mm-hmm.
how much guidance, like you're saying, that you can actually help people, and that loving your story where you're at, it's beautiful. It's so simple, but I can see the patterns that if you're not doing that, there's major issues, because it's like you're self-rejecting yourself every day,
Yes.
and then how are you able to share if you're doing that? Like, I'm hating
Mm.
myself low key or not so low key all the time. And my life.
Yeah.
Hey, come work with me. I'll help you. It's like, it's not gonna pan out well here.
Oh, I love that you brought that angle. And yeah, the magnetism there. Like there is something magnetic about a woman who is a stand for her story, the results she's created for herself, her journey. And that can really draw people in, like that confidence, that ownership, that especially as a woman, to be like, I like, because there's so much programming, right? Is it,
Mhm.
oh, don't be too much, don't brag. Oh, what will people think if you talk about that? And it's just tossing that out the damn window.
Mhm.
And something I love in my work is really reflecting to my clients their genius
Mhm.
and showing them like you don't realize how fucking amazing you are. Like let me show you that. Because so many of my clients are in I'm not enough when they first come to me. I'm not enough yet. I can't fully go hard in my business until I've arrived somewhere. I'm like, but you're already there. You're already there. And uh yeah, it's so easy in the online world to just, as you said, self-reject. Where I'm at is not good enough. I should be
Mhm.
further along. But mm, and a lot of, again, I work with a lot of coaches and service providers that they use a lot of like inspirational quotes in their marketing. And I'm always like, guys, it just no, enough with the quotes. Like it's a dime a dozen. Like it's not unique. It's not going to make anyone really understand your unique lens or perspective. And I'm like, look, we want to inspire people on Instagram, but why don't you use your own story as the inspiration piece?
Mhm.
Let's use that to inspire people because that's something people are going to remember versus the reposted inspirational quote they've seen 5,000 times that says nothing unique about your brand, your methodology, your heart. So it's, yeah, I love to also shift my clients into their story as the inspiration versus another inspirational quote.
Unlimited quotes, unlimited quotes. I know sometimes, especially as service providers, this is something that I see is I'm a service provider. I'm X, Y, or Z versus I'm a business owner who also delivers a service.
Hmm.
And I'm curious how you look at the business owner, the service provider, the like growth milestones for service providers and how the business evolves through that. You're often trading the time for money, but it's like from the business perspective, from the scale perspective, how does this all connect and evolve for the longer term growth? How do you think about that from the early stage and the evolution of that over time?
Ooh, I have something I really want to say on this.
I bet, because
So,
you're seeing it too.
yeah, so I think there's a lot online right now about scalability
Mhm.
and funnels and quote unquote passive income. And and I see a lot of new service providers, coaches, healers coming in being like, I want that $1 million funnel that the bro marketer told me about. Like, how do we do that? Let me set up that course and I'm going to be a millionaire. And I think we miss the initial stages of building a business as a service provider, which is really building your community
Mm.
and building relationships. It's like, where are you going to find the humans to put in said funnel without putting in the heart and the time required to build a community of humans who love you and who trust you? And so
Mhm.
I see a lot of, yeah, coaches being like, let me make the course in Kajabi and spending all their time doing that
Mm.
instead of getting in the work of building their one-on-one, building their skill set. And also just when you think about it from a price point,
Mhm.
one-on-one is obviously a higher price tag than pre-recorded. And so I see so many people putting so much time in their first year into
Mhm.
the pre-recorded, and the pre-recorded self-paced course is like, $500 or $300, whatever it is. And they're so let down by the result of that because
Mhm.
they don't have that community built yet of like people to be like, hey, this is for you. So I always say like, that's beautiful, we get to do that, but let's get in some reps of working with your humans, getting to know your people, getting to know your ideal client, growing your community, building your relationships, and then let's create something that's really accessible,
Mhm.
that is just a more accessible taste of your genius. And look, I'm not against doing pre-recorded or self-paced in your early years, but I think we need to release the expectation that that's like going to be your $1 million.
After your first launch.
Yeah, yeah. And I had a lot of programming around that when I first started, because I had
Mhm.
seen a lot about scalability, work 4 hours a week, barely have any client calls. And it was it was attractive, but I hadn't laid a lot of the foundational knowledge of honing my craft, of building that community. I didn't have people to put into the scalable course, the scalable offering. Um, but yeah, there's a lot right now about the passive income. And a lot of coaches and healers are, I think, falling for what I view as sometimes predatory marketing
Mhm.
of you'll become this, $20,000, $50,000 passive income every month if you take this course. And it's like, to me, jumping a little too far ahead. Like you need to lay that foundation first.
It was the month before my wedding, and I had bought different courses over time. You're probably familiar with the ones that are ranging from 1 to at least probably 7K all across the internet. And so I had bought these over the years, and I think I was going through my own kind of premarital freak out, and I am reading the marketing for this one, and I'm crying from the marketing. And I, on the spot, like, pay. And it was so bad. And yeah, it was just a funny experience to reflect back on. That was 4 years ago now, but it really feels resonant of like, it gets you, it's like trained to be hitting these emotional points and get you so, and that the delivery isn't always there. In some of these
Yeah.
online programs, it can feel like the wild, wild west of online purchasing. And I have to imagine it's gotten even worse, like than 4 years ago, because it's even more accessible to get in and put something together, and the delivery even less has to be there. The price points, I think there's been a lot of compression in the marketplace to draw prices down, so maybe it's not as painful of an experience, but you can still waste a lot of time. And your comment about like, I'm going to blow this launch out of the park, I'm going to relaunch, like that can take you years to keep going through that and build the self-paced, and you're having minimal sales when that whole time you could have been one client at a time, honing the craft, doing the work, getting, hyper focusing on the community, on delivering, and then that informing the product down the road. But you see people focus on the product first. Does that feel like stalling to you? Like, fear of failure? What is that in your experience when that's happening? Like, I'm going to make the perfect course and take 3 years for it to launch and sort of be selling
Mm,
it the whole time instead of doing the work. What do you think that comes from?
yeah. Oh, I love that question. Yeah. So I see that a lot as well, right? Of, okay, I'm going to build the perfect course and I'm going to be in it for months, years. And yeah, I call that getting ready to get ready. And it's, and it's like, let me wait for the absolute perfect time for me to really go all in my business. And I'm calling myself out here. I have done this.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's like when you're in the like, let me do this thing first before I really lean in. It's
Hmm.
self-protection. It's
Hmm.
avoiding doing the uncomfortable, messy work that is scaling your business. And it's like putting all your hopes and dreams on this fantastical $1 million course you're building. instead of leaning in right now
Mm-hmm.
and be like, what can I do right now to bring my vision into reality instead of putting it months and years down the line when I have some perfect course built. And I work with primarily women. And again, so many of us have a really deep perfectionism pattern. And
Mm.
it's safety, right? It's safety. It's like, let me not make a mistake. Let me not write the wrong, again, quote unquote, wrong Instagram post. Let me not make someone uncomfortable in selling to them and inviting them to work with me. Let me instead just be like really leaning back and just, it's all controlled when I'm building this course for years. It's not messy. It's very controlled. And to me, entrepreneurship is tangentially related to how messy you can get your hands.
Mm.
You're like a goddamn artist. Like the first 2 years, you see some people that are like, let me put a stencil on the canvas before I start painting and moving. I'm like, guys, I should start painting. Let's be Jackson Pollock.
Yeah, it's sort of
Because
pretty,
that's how
right?
you learn. That's how
Yeah.
you grow, by being in the work, by being in the mess, by being in the chaos, by releasing control and free falling a little.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're, yeah, trying to get it right, you're robbing yourself of all the lessons, all the growth that you can have in by willing to be imperfect, by willing to let things get a little messy. And that's when things really started to take off for me, when I was like, I'm just gonna jump on in and collect mistakes, collect no's, like Halloween candy from potential clients. Let me see how many no's I can get. I know there's gonna be some yeses in there. Let me see how many things I can try that don't work. And I try things all the time now that don't work, but I don't make it mean anything about me anymore. I'm just like, huh,
Mm.
interesting. What do I get to tweak? So
Looking for the
that's,
feedback loop, like through the process. It's powerful. Like
yeah,
just being
yeah.
willing to do that.
Yeah, you can't grow as an entrepreneur. You can't grow your marketing or your messaging. A huge area I love supporting my clients on is their messaging, the power of the word, the power of how they're communicating their work. And it's like, instead of sitting and working on the perfect messaging, the perfect website, the perfect sales page for months, let's start getting some feedback. Let's start speaking about this in your stories and your Instagram posts. Let's start seeing, looking for some data points. What's causing people to move? What's causing people to click the link? Maybe they didn't sign up, but let's learn that way. Let's iterate that way by being like, okay, launch it. Okay, maybe it's, we're not getting some signups right now. Interesting, but what can we play with here to shift that? What do we get to turn the dial up on that you've seen is working a little, that people are saying things like, you're in my head, or they're clicking the link. Maybe they haven't bought yet, but let's turn the dial up there. Let's turn the dial down on that thing that maybe got the crickets. And you
Mm-hmm.
don't get to perfect messaging and perfect, again, no such thing. You don't get to, let's say, amazing magnetic messaging and marketing without just being in the repetition, being in the mess of
Mm-hmm.
experimentation.
Mm-hmm. I love that. It feels important. And you were talking about community earlier. And the way I think of that is like the market responding. Like your community is this hyper focused element of the market. They're responding, and what do they want and need? And AKA, what does your community want and need? And I think sometimes there's such a disconnect between some of the business lingo and what's actually happening. It's like, your audience, the people that are following you, aka your prospective clients, like how's it all connecting? And it sometimes just seems so fractured and unclear, the business lingo to the way, a newer entrepreneur is looking at what they've already been doing. I'll meet entrepreneurs that have huge audiences. They haven't turned on the levers to monetize, and it's like, whoa, you've done the hard part. You have an audience, you have community. Okay, what do they need? How can you help them? And connecting those dots versus, bypassing that element of it.
And I think there's something I need to speak into there that you just called out. Your following, the size of your audience, often has nothing to do with how much money you're making. I
Mm,
meet entrepreneurs all the time with huge social media followings that aren't
mm,
making any money, and they're trying. But it's, again, to me, it all comes down to messaging. And
mm,
like you said, understanding your community and what they really desire, what is actually their desire versus what you've been told you should launch or market that would make you a lot of money. It's getting curious about your people, and like we were saying earlier, how you can solve problems. And I have a relatively small following.
mm.
And when I had, again, my storied quantum leap moment, my following didn't grow at all. It actually shrunk.
Mm.
My ideal client was in my audience. And anyone listening, if you're a service provider, I guarantee your ideal client is in your audience too, right now. But you're not speaking to them. You're speaking, and I like to call it coach jargon, spiritual jargon. You're kind of
Everyone,
lost.
everyone.
You're kind of lost in the 10-step processes and the certifications, you're marketing that, and you're not speaking the language of your ideal client. So they're scrolling right by you. They might think you're really cool and funny. Like for years, people thought I was cool and funny, but they weren't buying from me.
Right.
And then when I really worked on my messaging, that's when they start to come out of the goddamn woodwork. And my following shrunk actually because I got so clear on who I was here to serve and the work I was here to do. So a lot of people opted out of my world. And I was like, great, bye. But the people, my ideal client that was already following me started to really lean in when I cleaned up my messaging and got really clear of what I was here to do. And yeah, a lot of newer entrepreneurs think I need more followers. I need more followers. I need to go viral. And I'm like, well, if you're not converting people into your work now, why would 10,000 followers solve the problem? Would that, not a high chance if there are 10,000 more people landed, you already have 10,000 followers, they're going to buy. It's like we get to look at how you're communicating your work and what your people really want.
So many gems. I feel like I could talk to you for a while longer. I want to
Oh, do
like bring
we?
up a million things. But speaking of your work, what are the best ways to people to initially engage with you? And if they want some of the support, especially for our service providers out there feeling stuck, feeling burnout, where is the best way for them to land and start an engagement with you, Emily?
Oh my God, hit me up on Instagram. I spend way too much time there. Yeah, DM me on Instagram. Check out what I have in my link tree. I have some, actually, we were speaking about pre-recorded. I have some pre-recorded, more price accessible courses in there around messaging, around content, selling, niching, all the
Oh,
key
love
pillars.
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
selling,
come check.
selling one of the more underrated but need to be overrated aspects of business.
One of my favorite areas to teach my and guide my clients on because it can be, yeah, so triggering. A lot of my clients are like, I don't want to pressure them. I don't want to be a used car salesman. I
Yeah,
don't want
I'm
to be
not good at
rejected.
sales.
Yeah. And I'm like, let's look at that. This gets to be so much fun and so beautiful and an experience in, yeah, how can I be a human to you? How can I be of service to you? Like when I have a quote unquote sales conversation, I don't even view it like that anymore. I'm like getting so curious. What's going on in your world and how might I be able to support you? And if there's no opportunity for me to support you, beautiful. Let's stay Instagram friends.
I love that. So good. Thank you, Emily. And if you have any closing thoughts that for especially our early stage founders that they need to have land right now, what would be your biggest takeaway to help impart there?
Oh, I have something for you. I have
Okay.
something for y'all. So, okay, so there's all these scary statistics, right, about percent of businesses that fail.
I think
And
it's
I don't want
90
that just
plus, 90 plus.
95% is what I
Yeah,
saw.
yeah.
And I want to say to you, don't let that scare you because I'm of the belief the ones that don't continue on in their journey, it again is often that mismatch of the expectation versus the reality.
Mm,
I think people give up far too fast, far too soon, because they're not immediately seeing financial result in the first year, even the first few years.
mm,
So it is, I think, aligning your expectation. It's gonna be a ride, baby. It's gonna be pushing the boulder and just falling in love with the journey and the woman you become, the human you become as you climb the mountain. To me, that's the secret sauce of entrepreneurship is that resiliency and sticking with it versus giving up and falling in love with the journey versus the destination. Because here's the thing, you get to the destination, you get to the 10K, the 20K, the 50K. Human mind is like, that's great. What's next? So it's falling in love with the journey of entrepreneurship, as wild and crazy as it is.
I love that. It reminds me when I was a swimmer, you can always go 1/100th faster.
Mm.
And so you
Mm-hmm.
get your best time, you got into the destination, but now you can go 1/100th faster. Infinity, like you can always go 1/100th faster. And there was a moment in business that I was like, oh, it's the same thing. Like this can always be a little better. It's not about the best time or it being done or perfect or right. Like 1/100th. And if you're honing it in 1/100th, you know, you and like where are we gonna land? We'll probably land somewhere we never even thought possible because you just kept doing that, which is epic. You know, I believe that there's some amazing destinations that we can travel to, you being in one of them, and this journey, but it doesn't start there either. That's important. That's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. Beautiful. I
Yeah.
love that.
Emily, thank you so much for your time today. I hope our listeners got their gem. Please take a moment to whatever you're locking in from this, you know, get it, whether you write it down or have a little implementation moment. And thank you, Emily, for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having
Yeah.
me.
We'll see you next time on the Lila Life Show.